Conduit was not an elite spec that I was super excited about. Checking the gameplay, checking the new traits and abilities, it didn't seem as interesting as some other of the new elite specs. But trying it out, I do think it has a space for Revenant. The Rasa Legend is kinda fun, it has some interesting abilities, while also giving you this cool little change of pace with pressing your F2 of cooldown and keeping your rotation in check to when you have to press it, and also forcing you to change to other lanes as fast as you can. It's a little bit like Core Rev, but like better. The traits in the new builds are a little bit cooked right now, and they make it a little bit less interesting if you want to be optimal. So let's go through what you can do to make it a bit more fun and understand what this spec is really about. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Go to my Ko-Fi if you want to support my content. Go to my Twitch to watch me live every morning, and let's get into it. Now, there are two builds for Conduit right now, Condition and Power. At the end of the day, this is indeed a DPS spec. We don't have a heal build or a boon build for that matter. And if you go through the gear and everything, it's going to be the same one that you would usually use in Power, Herald, or Renegade. You're going to have Sword, Greatsword on Power, and you're going to have Mace, Axe, and Spear on Condi. Same build, literally just the same thing. That being said, when you actually go for the Condi build, you actually go for Perpetual Wisdom. So, usually... oh my god, I don't know what happened there. Ooh. Usually, the way that Rasa would work is that you use your F2 to get yourself some attributes, right? Depending on the legends you have. And when you actually use your utilities in your spec, you're gonna see that you get this thing called affinity. And when you actually use your F2 with a lot of affinity, your attributes will last for longer, as you can see right here. Instead of 2 seconds, now it's 6. Also, I just want to say that whenever you use the Rasa one, you get those little things on your back, which I think is very, very cool. You can make some very cool transmog with this. And you have 3 versions here. One Condi, which essentially just gives you more Condi damage when you activate Cosmic Wisdom, which you would think is the one that you actually play on Condi, but it's actually not. You pick instead Perpetual Wisdom. And why is that? That is because this makes it so you have your buffs at all times, regardless of your affinity, regardless of your cooldown of anything. You get an upkeep. You get less energy, as you can see right here, but pairing this with Boundless Knowledge that lets you have both of your attributes while you have your affinity up. This ends up being your Perpetual Wisdom up. You just get all the attributes, all the benefits like that. Now, the cool thing about this is too, is that because you have a lot of affinity here, when you change builds, you're gonna get some energy. I was in combat, so I couldn't really get it, but there you go. So you can kind of have an easier way consuming energy. And because you're playing Condi, this is really not that big of a deal. On Power, it kind of feels like you really need a lot of energy, especially in terms of upkeep. And you definitely do require that a little bit in something like Malek, so you gotta be very fast. But while you are indeed in Rasa, you don't really care too much. And because you have a conductive armaments that gets you affinity every time you use a weapon skill, you just have your weapon skills there at all times. And look at the amount of energy that I gotten just because of switching to 90%. So I can just be okay here, pressing all the buttons, and as soon as I'm running out, I stop my elite, and then I come back to my other stance, and I keep going. It's pretty easy, it's pretty chill, and yeah, it's pretty fun. But why is it fun? It's fun because, well, this is just playing Condi Rev. It's Condi Rev. It's the same type of idea. You're just sitting here, you know, your F2, just keep it up. Doesn't really change that much how you play the build, and your affinity is just pressing their normal buttons, so like who cares? It doesn't change the build in like it doesn't change what Condi Rev is in any way. Yeah, sure, you have Rasa and you have your abilities, but that's like what? Your elites, which, you know, he jumps there, that's nice. And you have your Hex, Vortex that you want to spam. There's 2 things you want to spam. But that's kind of it. There's nothing else to it. Is that really enough to be a new elite spec? Probably not. Now, this is the best build right now in terms of DPS. That's what people are playing it. That being said, there's another version of this. Instead, you can pick Mistfire that will indeed do more damage and daze enemies when you press your F2, and whenever you daze an enemy, which you do have in your setup in Condi, you'll be getting more burn. More Condi, more damage. And you pair this up with reoccurring insight. When you swap legends, reduce the charge of Cosmic Wisdom for each point of affinity you had before swapping. And that's pretty cool because now you don't have an upkeep, right? Instead, you're here trying your best to get as much affinity as you can. Use your F2 when it launches and then switch. Boom. And your cooldown of your F2 is gonna be lower. Now, it doesn't go too much. It doesn't go that much lower, which I think is a little bit of a mistake. I feel like it should be like, ooh, you switch with 3 affinity and you're just, ooh, you're blasting, right? You have 2 instantly, right? And you can just press it so many times, right? That's kind of the point of the build. But it definitely changes the way that Rasa plays and Conduit plays a lot, I think. It would be nice if instead you can go for Expanded Consciousness, which lets you get 5 affinity. This also would be very, very cool because guess what? If you have F2 and whatever, let's say you used it and you switch with this, boom, the cooldown is gonna be so much lower. Still not instant, but super, like way, way lower. The problem is that getting affinity without the weapon trait that lets you get affinity when you use weapon skills is very difficult. On Rev, you don't really press that many of the buttons in terms of utility, and they're kind of expensive. And if you use an upkeep like this one that you will be using a lot of the time, it doesn't give you more affinity. And look how much energy it's taking from me. You want to do this for your build, and it doesn't really do anything. This absolutely needs to be changed for this trait to be useful. The point of Revenant is to have upkeeps. Most of this, no, actually no, all of the legends have upkeeps like this, and I guess they wanted Rasa to not be this way. That's why they actually don't really have any upkeeps here. They're all like abilities, and they want you to spam them. But there's a lot of these abilities that don't really work for Condi and power, right? They kind of work for one or the other, and it's just not that much of a strong effect for you to like use this as much. And like it could be okay, honestly, if you take this and then use your upkeep in your second legend, right? I think that would be okay. But only if this actually gives you affinity. So this straight right now, it just doesn't really work. It could be very fun, but it isn't. That being said, this build without the 5 affinity, and you instead going for 3 affinity with weapon charges and switching up and back and getting your F2 less cooldown and blasting with it, it feels very fun. It feels very different, and I really, really like it. To put the emphasis on the utilities instead of the weapon skills, yeah, I think it kind of work. It's a little bit similar to Renegade, but I mean, I guess it's a little bit different. Honestly, if they gave it like not only cooldown reduction on the F2, but also on your weapon skills or your utilities, this could be so much like way more fun and way more interesting in Revenant particularly. But I guess they have done the cooldown reduction stuff too much with the other specs. I don't know. I really feel like it's kind of missing a little bit more, or oomph to make it more fun. The attributes are nice, but I mean, that's just more damage. Now we also have the build of the builds, the power build. That doesn't really do that much damage. I don't know, that made that sounds cool sound. The Conduit one is like 44k, which is pretty nice. But power doesn't really get there. The cool thing about this one, right, is that, this time you use Beguiling Haze, which teleports you around and does damage. It's actually pretty cool, and it resets as well, which really would work for something like maximum affinity increase for Expanded Consciousness. If the upkeep in Shiro worked as well and gave you more affinity. Also, this is pretty funny that I just realized it, but if you if you press Impossible Odds once, right, and you upkeep it, it gives you an affinity. If you disable it and put it back again, it gives you second affinity and then third. That's obviously not intended, and it's kind of dumb because obviously it should just be giving it to you by just having it on instead of having to switch it off and on and off and on. But I mean, there you go. But with this build, guys, you go for recurring insight. You go for conductive elements to get all the affinity from your weapon attacks, and you just play normal power rev. Yeah, use your special attack, I guess, here. As you can see here, you switch, and then you go into Impossible Odds and go into Sword and do a lot of damage. You press your F2 from time to time to get your attributes, and obviously you want to have this up at all times while you're doing your burst windows, right? One of the big worst windows is you going into your going into your Shiro with your attributes, go into impossible odds, and use your Greatsword 5 to do an insane amount of burst. But as I said before, this really just plays like power rev, right? It's still fun, it's still interesting, and I think I like it more than I like something like Vindicator personally, but I know that some people are gonna disagree with that, of course. The rotation is already here in the Snowcross build, so I'm not really gonna go through it, but that's the entirety of the concept. Use your F2 before your burst windows with 3 affinity, and use user weapons. Wow, you don't even use Billowing Haze. That's so boring. It's like the big ability for power. I guess it's just from ability. You'd use your leads though. That's nice. But I think what it probably would look like, it would be something like this, right? You do this, you do this, you do this, you go in here, you just change to sword, and you just do a lot, just normal rotation that you usually do, right? Like, look at that. And then you switch back to the 1, and then you just kind of keep doing your thing, right? I kind of fucked up already because I didn't use my F2 fast enough. I should have done it before I switched so I could get the cooldown reduction. Let's do it one more time just because I'm kind of pissed off that I failed. So Elite 2, F2, there we go. And then going into the Greatsword, changing here. We're gonna sit here until our F2 is ready. Use it and then switch weapons, switch legends, because otherwise we're not gonna get the cooldown reduction. Here we go, F2, and then switch weapons. Boom, there we go. Keep doing damage, Elite, and then getting ready for change again. 5. Oh, and there it is. We got it. And you're gonna see that we're only doing a 30k. I'm sure you can do way more than this, right? I'm sure you can, but that will be the idea of the build, right? There's not that much more on this build to be talked about. It really requires a little bit more thought, I think. I think most of the things are because of bugs. I know that power is also kind of bugged because of other reasons too. But I think the whole affinity change would really fix this spec. If you just make it so your upkeeps give you more affinity, all the other options really work in different scenarios. I still think it's a little bit boring. It's not like the most exciting thing ever. I think, you know, doing some cooldown reduction of your weapons or even your utilities when you press F2 would be a fun little thing, a little bit another incentive for you to actually go and press F2 regardless of the traits you actually take. I think it would be way more fun, way more interesting, and it's such a small little thing. Maybe you can give it something else. I don't know. Just, I think it would really work with the utility, particularly because of how the entire spec works. Like, usually, we're very accustomed on Revenant to press a lot of our buttons in terms of our weapons. But Rasa is about the utilities, is about the legends. So I think it would make so much more sense. I can't believe I got hit by that. It makes so much more sense to make it tied to the utilities. I really think it would be a good idea. You can probably have some other idea if you're in it. I'm sure you thought about something, but that's just a little one that I think would work very well. But let me know what you guys think. What do you think about Conduit? Do you think it's very bad? Do you think it's very good? Do you think I'm complaining for nothing? I don't know. I'm curious. Let me know in the comments down below. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Also, my camera's falling down, so look, just subscribe and see you guys around. Love you all.